Greetings, fanboys and fangirls. Jared here with another review from Fanboys Forever. Today we're going to be having a look at the brand new He-Man and the Masters of the Universe Evil-Lyn. Now these are from the new CGI series on Netflix, and I've been really excited to take a look at these guys with you. Now anybody who's watched the CGI show knows that Skeletor and his cronies actually tap into the power of chaos for their very own style of transformations so that they can bulk out and power up just like He-Man and his crew. I think this is a great change, and we'll see if these figures are accurate representations of what they did in the show. We'll now have a look at Evil-Lyn. Evil-Lyn has her artwork up here, a little something on the front and a demonstration on the back. And here we have Evil-Lyn out of the packaging. I'll go ahead and take her staff from her hand here so we can get a better look at the figure. Overall, I think it does look pretty well like the show. It's a fairly accurate representation of the animation, and Evil-Lyn is fairly traditional in this series. You can see this is her transformed state where they harness the power of chaos and Skeletor shares it with his minions. You can also see that they have made some modern updates, such as adding the bat wings to the sides of her tiara here. These are kind of interesting because they kind of remind me of the old Capcom fighting game Darkstalkers, so it's kind of a similar aesthetic to that. And aside from giving her that vampiric look, there's really not much else that has been changed dramatically from Evil-Lyn's design. She still has kind of the tiara thing and the purple bodysuit that we've seen in a lot of the more modern animation. In the back, though, they do let her hair out, which I think is a pretty cool design idea. Usually that's all up in like the tiara or whatever you want to call it there. And it's very swoopy and cool looking, so it does limit a little bit of the articulation, but we'll get into that, of course. They've also added this kind of drapey, flowy thingy, like a half skirt sort of deal, which is accurate to the animation, but also poses some functional problems, and we'll get into those. Paint-wise, they have painted most of the areas that you would expect. And of course, there's some little details here and there that they've missed, but I think that overall it's pretty serviceable. This does appear to be some kind of screen printing or something here on the bat wings coming out of the head, and they have apparently tampoed on some kind of graphic for the eyes there to where you can see her crazy looking creepy like bat eyes, like nocturnal eyes. So I do think that's a good little touch. Let's talk about the functionality of the figure. With the head, I wasn't really sure at first that it wanted to articulate. It felt kind of stuck and still feels a little weird, but I mean, it does turn. But honestly, you're not going to be able to get it to turn too awfully much because the hair is kind of blocking things. Yeah, you can work with it and kind of get the hair around, but honestly, it feels kind of unpleasant to sort of stretch things like that. Then you have the little parts in the front, and honestly, this is about as much as I feel comfortable with. You can make her look down a little and up just slightly, but once again, the hair kind of gets in the way back there. With the arms, you can go up about this much before she just runs into the bat wing right there. And then you can go back quite a ways, and so you can cheat it and go from the back and get it raised way up. So you can kind of work with it in different ways. Unfortunately, there's no shoulder hinge, and it feels like there would be. You're just sure. When I first started handling it, even though I knew there wasn't one, I instantly was trying to articulate it out because it feels like it should be there. There's nothing at the elbow, and her elbows are already almost at right angles, so that was an interesting design choice. She does have a swivel here at her upper arm, but it feels horrible to articulate. I'm not really sure what to say about it, except that it almost feels stuck, even though I know it's not. It feels like whatever they're using as the peg system in there, that you're like turning something you're not supposed to turn. And this one, I never really could get it to turn the right way, and I'll probably have to heat it up, maybe unplug it and then plug it back in. I definitely don't want to risk like tearing it by, articulating it around. So be aware of that when you get this. You probably will need to heat her up just to make sure that you can move those securely and safely. The waist does articulate, but it does an action feature articulation, kind of like He-Man and Skeletor, but not exactly. Whereas those have like a snapback feature and you could move it in all sorts of different radial directions. For her, it's just like this. That's it. You can either go from either side. It's left or right. There's no backwards or forwards or anything. And I really think that takes a lot of the fun out of doing that motion. There's been so many figures able to do this, but this is just very basic stuff. This is exactly what some of the 2000X figures would do 20 years ago. It's at least fun to take her staff and, you can do that sort of thing where it's not much of a snapback. It doesn't feel as powerful as He-Man and Skeletor's, but I mean, it works. Going on down, you can see that this leg at least can go this far forward, and it can go this far out. Not very much though, and I certainly expected her to be able to do a little bit more of a split. This one, you are just out of luck. You have this hard plastic piece. It is attached in. You're not going to be able to remove it or anything. And you can see the leg in there just as you're set. That's all there is. However, the boots do swivel down here, and the other one can too, so at least that's not inhibited. Disappointing articulation, I think, on Evil-Lyn for the most part. Not just because it wasn't made with articulation really in mind, but also because of the weird joint tolerances, to where it feels like some things are having a hard time turning, like the neck up here and some of the arms right here. It definitely takes a little bit of the fun out of articulating the figure, and because it has kind of an unpleasant feel to it. Also, because the legs just won't really work very well with the sculpt, it becomes incredibly hard to stand her up without it looking like she is perpetually leaning forward. So it's like she's got poor posture. You can see her head kind of, the neck is kind of curving, leaning out like that. Probably due a little bit to the hair and the slope of it. The designers were probably trying to keep it off of the body so that you could actually articulate it. But it's still just something to notice. She can stand, but it feels tenuous. You know, it's not very stable. One little push and she gets wobbly. Kind of unfortunate on that. Overall, even though the figure looks good, and it certainly looks like what we see in the show, I don't know if it's as functional as it needed to be. And it's more of a display piece. You're not going to be able to do too much with it. Like, she represents the character, she does the job, but they did not go any further. In some ways, it reminds me of when Playmates would do an April figure anytime that they had to for the last two Turtles series. Of course, we'll see how she looks with Skeletor, and this represents another problem. She is too tall. That is not accurate. She makes Skeletor look kind of small. I'm not really sure what they were thinking with the height on the figure. She is much taller than she should be. That could have easily been solved, and it's something that they should have been aware of, almost as if she were designed in isolation from Skeletor, and that it wasn't a very collaborative process. She is actually slightly taller than Origins Evil-Lyn. So we had Skeletor earlier, who was pretty clearly smaller than the Origins counterpart. Evil-Lyn is a little bit taller here. So yeah, it throws things just completely out of whack in terms of scale. Compared with He-Man, they're pretty well eye to eye. But once again, I think that maybe because of the tiara, she might be slightly taller than He-Man because of the top of the crown. And that is just weird. He-Man is a hulking behemoth Bigfoot of a man in this show. And even though, you know, they don't look horrible together, there's no way that Evil-Lyn's legs are supposed to be longer than He-Man. So it's just out of whack from a design standpoint. And of course, you can forget it about her riding in any of the vehicles or anything like that very well because of both this hair and this skirt piece. So Evil-Lyn is unfortunately a very limited figure. Although it looks good, Evil-Lyn is definitely weaker than I expected her to be in a lot of technical areas. I definitely think that Evil-Lyn had a long way to go before they got her correct. Unfortunately, there's a myriad of problems, from the scale being way off, to some of the joint tolerances not being right, to the figure just being kind of awkward to handle. It just seems like that there was so much that could have been fixed and should have been fixed before the figure got released, that it's pretty disappointing to see it released in this state. However, a part of me also can't help but be thankful that a figure like that even happened. Usually with a boys action line like this, a lot of the female characters are completely sidelined, and I'm glad that Mattel is at least making the effort to make sure that that doesn't happen. And like I said, I do believe there's a good chance that she was developed in isolation from the others. Alright friends, that'll do it for me. I sure do hope you've enjoyed the review today. Of course, be on the lookout, because very soon I will be covering some of the other figures in the CGI He-Man series, so I really hope you look forward to seeing that very soon. And as usual, make sure you leave a comment down below. Of course, be sure to watch my other He-Man videos, as I have much more Masters of the Universe content right here on Fanboys Forever. As always, God bless you and yours, and I'll see you on Fanboys Forever. Fanboy out.